Surprise, look who it is! Hey everyone, I am finally back with a YouTube video. It has been way too long, and apologies about that. There's really no excuse for it other than I just haven't had time. 2022 went by so fucking quick, and so I'm here to talk about my favorite movies and least favorite movies of the year. In this video, we will be breaking down my top 10 favorite movies of 2022, and in a separate video, I will be addressing my least favorite, but we're gonna keep things fun and positive for this one. I want to stress that this is my own personal list of my favorite films. It does not mean that these films are the best films of the year. Movies are a beautiful thing and they resonate with so many different people in so many different ways. And the films that I'm going to list on here brought me the most joy, the most happiness. They struck at all of the right chords with me. So even though some of them may not have been critical darlings or won over nearly as many people, they certainly won a place in my heart, and that's why they made it on my list. But there are so many movies to get through, so I have 5 honorable mentions I want to name before we get into my top 10. And my 5 honorable mentions are Honk for Jesus, Don't Worry Darling, Bodies, 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 Good Luck to You, Leo Grand, and The Batman. Already such a mixed bag of films, and I'm sure is striking a certain chord with some people. In their own ways, these movies resonated with me, and these films also stuck with me. Now we're gonna get into my top 10, starting from my number 10 spot, working my way up to number 1. And in my number 10 spot, we have Bullet Train. And I had a fucking blast with this movie. I really had kind of low expectations, or medium expectations, I should say. This film felt like if Quentin Tarantino made a crowd pleaser movie that appealed to a wider audience that's not quite as niche. It's very quick, it's very sharp, it's completely entertaining from start to finish with an amazing cast of wacky characters. I just had a blast with Bullet Train. In my number 9 spot, we had Disenchanted. Now this movie, sure, is not nearly as good as its first one. However, I feel like it hit so many areas just right for me, especially in terms of the direction they took with Giselle and Amy Adams. This still is Amy Adams' best role she's ever played to this day, I will say hands down. And this movie is very rewatchable. The music is whimsical. I just love being with these characters. It touched upon a lot of nostalgic points for me. So even though it is not a cinematic masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, it hit the right chords with me. It made me feel all happy and cozy. It put a smile on my face and I enjoyed the hell out of it. And my number 8 spot is Downton Abbey, A New Era. And I really wish that this movie had gotten more recognition than it did, but I thought this movie excelled and presented a better finale or closure to this series than even the first film did. It's funny because I was never a fan of the actual series finale of Downton Abbey, and I thought the first movie, was a better finale, and now I feel like this sequel movie is an even better finale. I will never get bored with watching Downton Abbey films, and this movie also made me feel very warm and cozy, but also made me cry my fucking eyes out. In my number 7 spot, we have The Menu, and oh my god, was this movie delectable. Not to be punny, but holy shit, this movie is wild, it is decadent, it is sharp, it is quick. The characters, I had no idea where it was gonna go. It's unlike any type of like thriller that I've ever seen in my life, and it really made me crave a fucking cheeseburger by the end of that movie. In my number 6 spot, we have The Woman King, and oh my god, did this movie feel incredibly cinematic. It reminded me of like kind of old school ways that Hollywood would present stories in film. It felt epic. It wasn't like dark to the point of being depressing. It was emotional. You cared about these characters. There was humor, there was romance, but also just completely well choreographed action scenes. Again, it just felt like an old school, big cinematic experience that should be experienced on the big screen. And I wish more people had experienced it. Viola Davis gave a tour de force performance for her career, as well as a shout out to Lashana Lynch. Everyone did an impeccable job. And now we are getting into my top 5. And I feel like the slots for 5, 4, and 3 were all kind of intertwining with each other and not sure who landed where. But ultimately, in my number 5 spot, we have Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. And holy shit, talk about one of those rare feats where the sequel, in my opinion, dramatically outpaces and outdoes the first one in almost every way. I was never a diehard fan of the first Knives Out, but I feel like the sequel, Glass Onion, took note of the areas that did not quite work and actually presented a fun, sharp, I said it, murder mystery whodunit film, the likes of which we rarely get these days. I felt like we got the closest to capturing the essence of Clue with this whodunit mystery than any other modern mystery we have gotten in the last several years. In my number 4 spot, we have She Said, and holy shit, talk about one of the most powerful movies I have seen all year. How provocative it was. Now, this movie is telling such a tragically true story, a very recent true story, but it told it in a way that didn't feel melodramatic or gratuitous. It was very grounded in and of itself. It presented the facts as it was. And for me, the biggest tragedy is that I feel like this movie did not hook the audience to go to the theater and tune in to watch it. She Said is just so incredibly gripping and makes you think and makes you analyze. It's dramatic without being depressing. It is a slow burn at times without feeling boring. And even though you ultimately know the outcome, if you read up on your recent Hollywood history, it still had me on the edge of my seat to see how the hell we are going to reach the climax of this shit show. Such a powerful film that I highly recommend to everyone to watch. In my number 3 spot, we have Nope, which is hands down my favorite film by Jordan Peele thus far. Yes, he hasn't had too many, but this movie felt like he leveled up like 5 times since his first 2 movie entries. There was a Steven Spielbergian quality to this. This movie is huge. This movie is meant to see on the biggest screen possible, which you really couldn't fully grasp based on the marketing campaign, which played all the cards close to its chest, to be fair. It is a mystery. It is a thriller. There are some horror elements, but I wouldn't classify it as a horror film by any means. It is a high suspense thriller. The approach it takes to presenting these sci-fi elements were so original that I couldn't take my eyes off the screen and couldn't believe what I was honestly looking at. I was trying to think about what I was looking at. I was trying to process all of this. And that's the biggest thing about this movie. It is so memorable. For me, it's going to stand the test of time, and I feel like it reminds me of old school like Hollywood epics or Steven Spielbergian sci-fi films. All right, my number 2 and number 1 were really battling it out for the number 1 spot. It was very, very close. But in my number 2 spot, it is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. This film was in my number 1 spot all year since I saw it. No film had bested it up until towards the very end of the year, but Marcel is one of the most unabashedly heartwarming films I've ever seen in my life. It is one of those rare 5-star, 10 out of 10, A+ films that is so wholesome, everyone can watch it. It is for all ages. It is so pure, and I think that's what makes it so surprising, is when they do take away the grit, they take away the edge, and they just present something so warm and so wholesome and cozy, and something that wears its heart on its sleeve. It's so endearing, and it touches upon very real, simple, but poignant pieces within our lives having to do with family, and finding your family and holding on to that and what matters, and as well as the loved ones within your life. It is such an underdog of a movie, but one of the best movies I frankly have ever seen, and it brightened my spirits. It brought me to tears. It made me fall in love with it from the very beginning, and I will be singing Marcel's praises forever. But in my number 1 spot, he did it. My most anticipated movie of 2022 has successfully earned the place of being my number 1 favorite movie of 2022, and that is James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water. 13 years we've been waiting, and I have no shame in saying that I was and still am a diehard fan of the very first Avatar film, and I have been waiting with bated breath all these years for this sequel to Avatar, and it did not disappoint. This movie I have seen 3 times since the filming of this video. It's like a natural high sitting in that movie theater, watching it on an IMAX screen in 3D, the way it's meant to be seen. And the thing that I love so much about this is that I feel like I am actually, when I watch this movie, I feel like I was witnessing cinematic history happening right before my eyes. Like how those kids felt when they sat in theater for the first Star Wars. But these grand, larger-than-life films that break the ceiling in several ways within Hollywood filmmaking, especially in Avatar's case from a technological standpoint. Haters are going to hate. That is the world we live in. From a technical visual standpoint, these are the best visuals I have ever seen, ever put to film. Ever. And I don't feel that that's hyperbole saying it that way. I don't feel like I'm overhyping it, regardless of what you feel about the stories or the characters, because everyone has their own viewpoint on that. They transport you somewhere that you just want to be. And that is what cinema is initially at its core designed to do. It's meant to be a transport. It's meant to be fantastical, and it's meant to be an escape to someplace richer and you know, arguably better than what life has to offer here. I love all these characters, all the new characters. This movie is also building a bigger story in future films going forward, and I thought it's successfully delivered on all points in where this franchise is going to expand from, where it's going to grow from. And I can confidently say that I do think it is a little bit better than the first one, and I already love the first Avatar, but man, did James Cameron level things up and set this game board for a grand adventure going forward. And there you have it, everyone. That was my top 10 favorite movies of 2022, as well as those honorable mentions. Again, they all made an impact on me. Some got through to me in ways that other films did not. Maybe some of my favorites were your favorites as well, and I would love to hear your favorite movies of 2022. So feel free to leave that in the comments down below, and be on the lookout for a separate video where I will break down my least favorite films of 2022. Thank you all again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Ryan Bamey, signing off. Bye, everyone.